The landscape of modern fame is a shifting desert where the boundaries between public duty and personal branding have not just blurred but completely dissolved into a relentless 24-hour digital spectacle. In this new era, the traditional concepts of institutional dignity are constantly forced to collide with the hyper-polished mechanics of global influencer culture, creating a bizarre theater where every gesture, every wardrobe choice, and every carefully curated frame is dissected by millions of onlookers around the world. We watch from a distance as historical legacies are retrofitted for the social media age, transformed into aesthetic content that is meticulously designed to project an image of effortless perfection. Even when the underlying reality tells a vastly different story of frantic adaptation and commercial pressure. It is an extraordinary phenomenon to witness, a high-stakes game where the currency is absolute attention, and where the line between an authentic life lived in the public eye and a manufactured performance for international consumers becomes entirely indistinguishable. Before we dive deeper into this fascinating unraveling of modern prestige and explore the hidden machinery operating behind the scenes of the world's most talked about personalities, take a moment to ensure you are fully connected with us by subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications so you never miss our deep dive analytical updates into these unfolding global narratives. The contrast between the traditional exercise of soft power and the modern obsession with self-reinvention has never been more striking than it is in the current climate of global media, where the elite find themselves caught between two entirely irreconcilable worlds. On one hand, you have the ancient, slow-moving apparatus of institutional duty, which relies on a quiet, almost invisible continuity to maintain its relevance, while on the other, you have the chaotic, fast-paced arena of international celebrity, where a brand must constantly shout to be heard above the noise of the internet. This tension creates a fascinating backdrop for the events unfolding today, as prominent figures attempt to balance the heavy mantle of their inherited status with the commercial demands of a modern marketplace that values optics far more than substance. The result is a surreal public display where the most mundane elements of daily existence, from a basket of freshly washed summer vegetables to an artfully placed cup of artisanal tea, are weaponized as tools of sophisticated public relations, designed to telegraph a message of serene fulfillment to an increasingly skeptical audience. Yet beneath this veneer of pastoral peace lies an undeniable undercurrent of urgency, a sense that the glossy images being presented to the world are not a reflection of stable success, but rather a calculated shield against a mounting wave of public indifference and declining digital engagement. To understand the sheer strangeness of this contemporary media landscape, one must look closely at the way visual narratives are constructed in the digital sphere, where nothing is ever accidental and every single detail is chosen to evoke a specific emotional response from the viewer. When a public figure chooses to present themselves as an idealized version of an Earth Mother, drifting serenely through a sun-drenched garden in pristine white garments, without a single speck of dust or manual labor in sight, they are attempting to tap into a deeply rooted cultural fantasy of quiet luxury and rural retreat. It is a cinematic aesthetic heavily reminiscent of late 20th century European cinema, where atmosphere completely replaces plot and the viewer is left to decipher meaning from a series of disjointed, dreamlike close-ups staring into the middle distance. This style of communication completely bypasses the traditional media gatekeepers, allowing individuals to project their own chosen reality directly into the palms of millions of hands, regardless of whether that reality possesses any genuine credibility or foundational truth. The sheer artificiality of these presentations becomes a source of endless fascination and intense debate, raising profound questions about what these figures are truly trying to communicate and what kind of commercial architecture they are trying to sustain beneath the beautiful. Hollow imagery. As this strange digital theater plays out on our screens, the broader conversation surrounding these individuals continues to intensify, driven by a relentless cycle of rumors, anonymous briefings, and intense public scrutiny regarding their future movements and long-term strategic goals. The global audience is constantly left guessing whether these highly publicized aesthetic choices are merely harmless creative expressions or whether they represent the vanguard of a much larger, highly controversial campaign to regain lost footing on the international stage. This atmosphere of constant speculation is exactly what fuels the machinery of modern celebrity, turning every single social media upload into a valuable piece of real estate in the global news cycle, where the main objective is simply to remain visible at all costs. The tragedy of this approach, however, is that it requires an ever-increasing amount of noise to achieve the same impact, leading to a frantic, erratic pattern of brand management where one week the focus is on commercial mature expansion and the next week it abruptly pivots back to the intense cult of personality. It is an unstable dynamic that cannot be maintained indefinitely, and as we prepare to examine the real-world consequences of these strategies, the contrast between this glossy digital performance and the cold, hard realities of institutional power becomes impossible to ignore. The unsettling reality behind this highly synchronized digital display becomes clear when we strip away the pastoral romance and analyze the severe operational challenges facing the lifestyle brand at its center. This recent marketing strategy is a classic example of personality-driven public relations deployed to mask a structural commercial crisis. Only a short week ago, the brand appeared to be taking a much more practical and professional direction by stepping back from the intense cult of personality. They released a beautifully produced video featuring an elegant and popular influencer who shared hosting tips, lit floral candles, and subtly showcased organic raspberry spread and hibiscus tea. Industry experts viewed this as an intelligent strategy to transition the venture away from a single divisive individual and build a mature, sustainable lifestyle brand capable of standing independently. Yet, within mere days, that corporate discipline collapsed entirely, resulting in an abrupt and chaotic pivot back to the bizarre, self-indulgent garden imagery that completely alienates mainstream consumers. This erratic pattern of decision-making suggests deep internal anxiety and an inability to maintain a consistent corporate strategy, as the desire for absolute control constantly overrides sound professional advice. This sudden return to self-focused content occurs precisely as independent consumer data reveals that public interest in this commercial venture is facing a massive and unprecedented decline. Comprehensive website metrics demonstrate that digital engagement and click-through traffic have fallen dramatically, pointing to an empire that is essentially flatlining on the global stage. While it is true that modern media brands across the board are struggling with severe traffic drops, due to fundamental algorithmic shifts and the rise of advanced artificial intelligence search platforms, the crisis here is compounded by an absolute absence of authentic consumer trust. A couple of years ago, this brand was considered an incredibly valuable commercial property, supported by an inner circle of highly expensive communications firms and veteran Hollywood strategy agencies. Today, that sophisticated machinery has been replaced by a chaotic approach that resembles throwing objects at a wall in a desperate hope that something will connect with the increasingly indifferent audience. The modern public quickly detects when a performance is manufactured, and no amount of artfully arranged summer produce or overpriced artisanal teas can compensate for a total lack of foundational substance and authentic credibility. This escalating commercial vulnerability is the underlying engine driving the sudden, intense rush to organize a highly publicized family return to the United Kingdom this summer. The stark truth behind this upcoming journey has been described by veteran biographers as a potent mix of desperation and long-term financial failure. Having exhausted their creative leverage with major global streaming networks and facing long-term financial jeopardy, the couple is finding that their independent commercial appeal is vanishing. The harsh reality of the global entertainment marketplace is that you cannot sustain a commercial enterprise solely on grievances, and when the initial novelty fades, the public demands actual content. In their current predicament, returning to the very geographic and institutional heart of the family they spent years criticizing appears to be the only remaining method to restore their rapidly evaporating international credibility and commercial relevance. It is a high-stakes effort to turn the global news cycle into a personal shop window once again, leveraging their inherited status to attract the attention of corporate sponsors who have entirely lost interest in their independent creative projects. The Daily Beastie Show won amidst this frantic maneuvering. A fascinating wave of online discovery has recently exposed what appears to be the true commercial objective behind this summer trip. Analytical observers noticed that a prominent historical estate in the English countryside, the ancestral home and final resting place of the world's most iconic 20th century princess, has unexpectedly announced a total closure to the public for specific dates in August. This sudden operational closure perfectly aligns with a scheduled high-profile international military veteran event taking place nearby, triggering intense speculation that an intensive, multi-day documentary production is secretly being planned. Given the precarious state of the couple's independent finances, a major media project centered on this deeply revered historical figure would make perfect commercial sense, providing a lucrative lifeline to satisfy their massive media contracts. For years, industry insiders have dropped hints that such a deeply personal documentary was actively being developed, and this sudden regional closure provides the first concrete evidence that the project is moving into a phase of intense, real-world execution. The potential inclusion of such a sensitive historical subject in their commercial strategy represents an incredibly risky gamble that could permanently damage any remaining hopes of reconciliation. It signals an ongoing determination to monetize the most private and tragic elements of family history for global commercial consumption, directly violating the unspoken boundaries of institutional privacy. This operational plan stands in stark contrast to the quiet, dignified exercise of public duty being carried out by other prominent members of the family, who continue to leverage their platforms for genuine international advocacy without any hidden profit motive. As the intense summer heat sweeps across Europe, highlighting the profound importance of real-world environmental and social initiatives, the public is forced to choose between authentic public service and a highly artificial, commercialized presentation of personal life. This fundamental divide is what makes the upcoming visit so incredibly tense, setting the stage for a dramatic confrontation between the cold realities of institutional power and the desperate strategies of an empire struggling to survive. The deep historical context of this impending return reveals a fascinating institutional pattern that has repeated itself across generations of the British monarchy, demonstrating how the establishment ultimately deals with those who attempt to forge an independent path outside its strict boundaries. To fully comprehend the dynamics at play today, one only has to look back at the dramatic trajectory of the late Queen's youngest son, Prince Edward, during the late 20th and early 21st centuries. In the early 1990s, driven by a desire to be his own man in the modern world and declaring that he did not fancy a lifetime of routine ribbon cutting, he set up an independent television company called Ardent Productions to build a media career, completely separate from the family that made him famous. The venture went spectacularly badly, losing millions of pounds over the course of 8 years, and the harsh reality quickly became apparent that the only things the company could reliably sell were documentaries about the royal family itself. The experiment collapsed in total disaster in 2001 when an ardent film crew violated an explicit privacy agreement regarding Prince William at university, leaving the family incandescent with rage. Edward folded his media dreams, returned to full-time duties, and spent the next 2 decades transforming himself into a safe, reliable, and hard-working servant of the crown, ultimately being rewarded with his late father's title of Duke of Edinburgh. This historical lesson illustrates a profound institutional process whereby the monarchy prefers to absorb its prodigal children rather than engaging in permanent, public conflict. It is a slow, relentless absorption that neutralizes the problem, ending the argument by bringing the individual back under strict institutional control as a loyal servant for life. When we look at the behavior, actions, and public statements of the younger brother today, there is an increasingly clear message that he has grown entirely weary of his isolated existence in the United States and desperately wishes to return to his homeland. In America, He is a figure without a true national purpose, holding no official public role, stripped of his traditional charities, and entirely disconnected from the vibrant collective life he once enjoyed. His entire operational infrastructure remains firmly rooted in the United Kingdom, including his primary charitable focus with international military veterans, his press office, and his legal representatives, proving that his independent transatlantic experiment has effectively run out of cultural momentum. Furthermore, deep personal concerns regarding the stark safety differences between American and British educational environments have fueled an intense desire to have his children raised and educated within the familiar, secure traditions of his own upbringing, a consideration that weighs heavily on any parent facing the realities of modern society. The true resolution of this high-stakes family drama depends entirely on the specific terms of any potential settlement reached when they arrive on British soil this summer. If the visiting son chooses to accept his father's hospitality, stays beneath a roof provided by the Crown, relies on official state protection officers, and maintains absolute personal discipline without making controversial commercial statements, it will mark a significant victory for the palace. It would prove that the institution has successfully enforced the original boundaries it established years ago, allowing family members to live privately but firmly preventing them from embarrassing the Crown or degrading its prestige. However, if the couple is permitted to continue capitalizing on their official titles for personal profit while demanding the privileges of a royal palace and high-level family meetings with the king, it will represent a complete collapse of institutional discipline. Rewarding individuals who have spent years publicly rejecting the established terms of their departure would set a highly dangerous precedent, essentially signaling that institutional loyalty and public duty can be bargained away for the right price in the global media marketplace. The king himself finds his reign caught in a difficult balancing act, as recent public opinion metrics indicate a noticeable decline in general support for the monarchy, driven largely by the perception that the establishment has failed to handle these ongoing family crises with sufficient firmness. While the Prince of Wales enjoys exceptionally high popularity due to his unwavering commitment to duty and his highly successful international initiatives, the sovereign's softer approach toward family rehabilitation has caused widespread public skepticism. The British public has shown very little appetite for manufactured reconciliations or polished public relations maneuvers that feel deeply artificial. If the king believes that enough private assurances have been given and chooses to release a highly publicized family photograph with the grandchildren, it would trigger a massive public uproar across the country, viewed by millions as a profound betrayal of the hard-working members of the family who have remained loyal to their vows. The public easily distinguishes between the genuine, dignified exercise of soft power and a highly calculated performance designed to generate content for an international audience. The immense contrast between these two opposing philosophies of public life is ultimately demonstrated by the daily actions of those involved, highlighting a fundamental divide between service and self-interest, while one side of the family continues to carry out quiet, meaningful work on the world stage, whether sitting down with refugee women who have fled terrifying oppression to play sport or launching global environmental prizes alongside international activists. The other side remains locked in a relentless cycle of digital self-promotion and commercial